good, y'all? Welcome back to the Onyx Report, Black Masculinist news for the day. I hope y'all are well. Hope things are going well for you. Life is good. You know what I mean? Um, I'm in and out, man. Sometimes I'm feeling great. Other times I got to go to sleep for like 9 hours in the middle of the day for no reason whatsoever. So I'm bouncing around. But anyway, that said, hope you guys are well. Like, share, subscribe, join, and donate if you will. Support the channel, so we can continue to bring you independent Black male thought that's not influenced or coerced by any particular corporate or ideological entity, and is fresh along those lines. So we appreciate the support. My goal is to reach 30,000 subs. I'm at a little bit over 28. So if you can subscribe or recommend and share the videos, I'd appreciate it, so we can get this off the ground. Kind of think that the algorithm, kind of works against you in some real interesting ways. So anyway, that said, let me see who's up in here. What's up? I'm listening. Shout out to Aaron. What's up, Ricky? Ain't seen you in a minute. How you doing? Chef Mike, what's going on? Brother Tim, right? We got Black Man Swimming. What's up? Ron, what's going on? Hey, Rue, what's up? James. Let me see. He asked me who I'd rather see the Predator fight. Oh, man. I had to ponder that one, man. You caught me off guard, James. What's up, Donnie? I hope you guys are well. Look, so one is to deal with a piece that I was sent a little while ago that I thought was pretty intriguing, as far as some of the kind of things we assume as it pertains to Black men, and most particularly when we're dealing with issues of sexual assault and rape. All right. So that said, here's the piece. This is lawandcrime.com, right? This is dated August 19th, so just a few days ago. Shocking details emerge after woman accused of sexually abusing inmate while working as behavioral health counselor at jail, right? And so you can see her here, right? Cody, appreciate that support. Thank you. Yeah, this y'all are gonna trip out on this one. If you haven't seen it, you will trip. So anyway, let me get to it. It says a 43-year-old former behavioral health counselor who worked at a jail in Michigan as a third-party contractor faces a sexual assault charge months after an inmate filed a federal lawsuit claiming abuse in graphic detail. Teresa Lynn Simmons was booked on Tuesday, August 16th on the charge of second-degree criminal sexual conduct of a county inmate. Kent County records reviewed by Law and Crime show. Michigan law says an individual is guilty of criminal sexual conduct in the second degree if they engage in unlawful sexual contact with another person, in this case, a prisoner or probationer under the jurisdiction of a county. The law also specifies that the actor is an employee or a contractual employee of or a volunteer with the county or the Department of Corrections who knows that the other person is under the county's jurisdiction. This offense is punishable by up to 15 years in prison upon conviction. Authorities say that Simmons was employed by the Family Outreach Center, but provided behavior health services in the jail. As it turns out, Simmons currently faces a federal lawsuit filed in March by an inmate with schizophrenia who alleged that she sexually abused him. Authorities reportedly alleged that illicit sexual contact occurred on different occasions during January of 2022. The lawsuit obtained by Law and Crime, which is handwritten, claims Simmons subjected the inmate to manipulative mental abuse, excessive sexual abuse, frequent sexual assaults, even bribing the mentally ill man to perform sexual favors. I am telling the complete truth. I have no reason to be dishonest, he said. The lawsuit seeks $250,000. In the at times rambling complaint, the inmate refers to Simmons as a mental health sheriff that he first encountered after he was sent to the hole. Right? Says, I talked to Teresa Simmons several times one day. She gave me some writing paper with a short letter that said, Mama wants to see your BBC every time I come to visit you with you, my king. The inmate wrote. I didn't know what I was supposed to do. Shout out to Tim. Appreciate that support. He says, America won't consider you as a victim if you're a Black man or a Black boy. Yeah, oftentimes that's real talk. But I'm interested, when she talks about this, I want to see your BBC. I have an assignment in my black male class, where at a certain point I assigned my students to actually go look up the various terms used on porn sites for black men. And it's an amazing display of the inhumanity when it comes to how black men are perceived. We're little more than just walking phalluses in many respects. And so what I'm seeing here is the degree to which that's been internalized and operationalized with this particular woman. But let's continue. The inmate claimed Simmons would sometimes knock on my door with her breast exposed. So when I wake up, her breasts are the first thing I see. He then gave a detailed description of the defendant's nipples and a tattoo above her right breast. Damn. In mid-October, early November, she wrote me a letter telling me it's okay for me to show her my penis and that she was tired of her husband and missionary sex, and that her vagina was dripping wet every time she sees me, and then I have to start doing as Mama says, Mama being in all capital word, letters. Court document said, I figured I have to listen to her because she liked me, even though I tell her the truth that I hear voices in my head and that I have three people living in my head and that I see spirits, and sometimes she would control me and talk to me in my head. Oh, this is ridiculous. But if this is true, that she is actually taking advantage of a mentally ill patient and using him sexually, exploiting him as such, and this is a form of rape, which we'll get to in a moment. She would also write me and tell me she wants to F the shit out of me. She would also tell me she can lose her license for telling me that, but I don't understand what a driver's license has to do with sex, the inmate wrote. Wow. So he didn't understand that it had to do with her professional license. Thought she was talking about her driver's license. The allegations only got more graphic from here. Yeah, this is. Let me see. Let me see if I can jump in. He says, I still have some letters she wrote me and freaky song lyrics she would print and give to me. One day she came to my door and gave me a letter that said, go sit on your bunk and jack that cock off for mama now. So I sat on my bed. I started to do as Teresa Simmons said, and I jacked off my penis for her. And when I was done and ejaculated, she told me to do it again. So I listened because I'm a good listener, because Mama Teresa Simmons knows best. Then she gave me a letter saying that she would give me weed or coke if I did it every day. She came every day she came. I told her I don't want drugs. Then she told me she could give me cigarettes or vapes if I did it. And I have to start fingering her through a hole in her pants while she stands at my door. So I would do as she says and finger her, and she would tell me to smear her juices on my face and never wash my face. So I listened and I did it. Whenever she did the hand signal, come please her, I was very scared to do it. The voices in my head were afraid also. Damn. One day she wrote me a letter and told me that she wants to bend over in front of my door for me to try and put my penis in her vagina. I told her I can't do that because I don't want the police to kill me or tase me or beat me. Right? So that's just a portion of the letter. The inmate further claimed that Simmons called him her personal sex slave. Now, clearly there's a power differential when you're dealing with an official, an administrator, or a white collar position in a prison. So the power differential in and of itself, adding in sex, easy to see how she would come to that conclusion and use and abuse her power along those lines. The defendant's bond was set at $15,000. Her status was listed as in custody as of Friday morning. Wood reported the defendant was expected to be jailed at the Ionia County Jail so as not to jail her at the facility where she previously worked. Wood also reported that the defendant has hearings upcoming on August 30th and September 6th. So again, right, this is the woman accused of sexually abusing an inmate. Yeah, Cody says, appreciate that support. He says, people like this see prisoners or any person in prison as a fetish. I can tell you that it's not just prisoners. I've even seen this in hospitals where black males are coming in and being treated by nurses, particularly nurses that are reminiscent of this woman here. And many people enjoy the power differential because you got to remember the legacy of stereotype regarding black males is that we're hyper masculine, we're monstrous, we're sexually dominant, we're dominant in other ways, we're criminalistic, so on and so forth. So we're threatening, and it's a particularly fetishized kind of perspective, right? And the part of the fetish, and this is actually the case with white men too, But and I've talked about this before, but that's a whole nother show. The dominating and exploiting of black men and boys, right, is into part of this psychosexual fantasy. But in particular with white women, I've seen this with women who work in prisons. I've seen this with nurses, where dominating, exploiting, and causing pain to, if not sexually exploiting, black males is part of the thrill. You know, it's part of the thrill. With white men, it goes even further when you start talking about murder, right? Or you're treated more like big game. But with white women, it's a power kind of thing that's also expressed sexually. And it's rarely called out. And of course, I've reported on this throughout the last couple of years, most particularly. You have black women that participate in this dynamic too. As far as prisons are concerned, I've covered reports that deal with that dynamic. But the purpose of me bringing this up is because there is a push in many instances to exploit someone in a weaker position. And if he's 250 pounds of solid muscle and feared by society, how much more powerful does it make? 100, and I'm not talking about her in particular, but 130-pound, 5'2" woman. How much more powerful does it make her feel to be able to dominate him or exploit him? And this is not limited to prison officials or even nurses. Sometimes it's the misuse of policy, false accusations against the men in your lives, or um, anything of that nature, where you can use the police as a proxy. So again, the power reversal, right? The physical power, and then the reversal and exploitation of policy or position to exploit black men to make yourself feel more powerful. Those are real motivations that people have when it comes to exploiting black men. Now, in particular, this is a very specific type of violation here, right? And I could use other resources, but I literally pulled this up at the last second as the show intro was going. So I just wanted to, just kind of put this in your head. But if you're interested in this, you can go in depth and look more at custodial rape and look at what it is. But it's basically rape perpetrated by a person employed by the state in a supervisory or custodial position, such as a police officer, public servant, or jail or hospital employee, right? It includes the rape of children in institutional care, such as orphanages. This is what, if this brother is, you know, on the money as far as what he experienced, because he's got issues. So, to what extent it's real or not is a whole different thing. But he talked about being able to, describe her nipples and a tattoo on her breast. That could be pretty damaging. Could be pretty damaging. And I don't think they easily incarcerate people that work in prisons on an arbitrary charge. So I tend to lean more to it's more than likely she did this. But nevertheless, this is a form of custodial rape. She's in a position of authority and she's abusing that authority, right, for her own sexual pleasure and benefit. But the exploitation of, a visibly more dominant physical being like a black male who has a legacy, a stereotypical legacy of being perceived as a monstrous, a monstrous, villainous, walking phallus, is part of the fetish. And it's not an accidental thing. It's not to be dismissed. I can give you one of the prime examples of this in the 20th century with one Mike Tyson. This is off of the US Sun, or the sun.com. And you can see this article here entitled Jail Sex Shock. Mike Tyson claims he slept with prison counselor and had to do some really nasty stuff to her to reduce his sentence. So this is, one of the most dominant black men in the last century. People feared being in his presence, not only in his casual presence, but in the ring. So trained fighters, some of whom were bigger than Mike, were terrified of the man. This is a prime example of what I mean when I talk about black men physically and how we're perceived, right? So in this particular article, this is dated August 8th of this year, former heavyweight boxing champ Mike Tyson claimed he had sex with a prison counselor after being found guilty of rape in 1992. And shockingly, the 56-year-old said he had to do some really nasty stuff to the woman in hopes of having his sentence reduced. Right? That's that power differential I was talking about. The American's boxing career came to a juddering halt in 1992 when he was sentenced to 6 years in prison after being convicted of rape in Indiana. But he was released in 95 after serving less than 3 years of his sentence. Speaking to Vlad TV, TV, Iron Mike, who made a return to boxing at age 54 or at age 54, revealed all about life behind bars and sleeping with one of the counselors at the time. He explained earlier this year, I got in trouble like the first 6 months and stuff, cursing, getting written up. And then by that time, I got the hang of the place. Hey, I know how to do this. Because next thing you know, I'm dating one of the council workers now. She's letting me have sex with her now. So I'm going good. But the first 6 months, I was getting write ups. I have to pay that year back. Now I'm like a star pupil prisoner, trusty everything. Then, hey, Mike, remember the first 6 months you were a prick? Boom, they gave me another year. So by passing the GED, right, General Education Department, they took that year away. So I flunked the effing GED and got mad. And so I had to start dating this counselor and stuff, giving her money and doing really some nasty stuff to her. And she let me pass this test. Now, one of the things we talk about on this channel is the vulnerability of Black men, not just, in media, but also in terms of policy, but also in terms of situations like this, where there's a clear power differential that places men in vulnerable positions. So even Iron Mike, right, one of the most physically devastating and imposing Black men in the last century, is being manipulated and exploited, right? This is what we're talking about. Okay. Then it continues. Tyson then admitted his sentence kept getting reduced, that ultimately led to him continuing his boxing career. Right? He added, I came in with 50 something years. They cut it all the way down to 3 years. I was doing 69 at first. They gave me 63. Then they took 10 off. Then it was 53. And then they gave me 10. I had to do 3. I got 7 on parole, I guess. Yeah. In an episode of Hot Boxing with Mike Tyson, he told presenter Jim Gray how he had a ball inside. He said, I thought that this was the worst thing that could happen to a human being. He described how he felt safe and secure, locked up. A picture of him there. Right. Tyson then went on to explain a sexual encounter he had in jail with a woman who worked there. It's not known if she was the same female he discussed on Vlad TV earlier this year. He added, I had a girlfriend and I got a girl pregnant in prison. I was living a life in prison. It was just meant to be. I was Mike Tyson and everybody gave me what I wanted. Everyone talking like I was some tough guy or some cool guy. I was just a pig. This is ridiculous. Now, most people won't feel much empathy because as far as they're concerned, he's a rapist. But what a lot of people forget is that when you actually look at the men that are exonerated from prison using DNA evidence, over half of them have been Black men, often who spent decades in prison for a crime they didn't commit. How many of those men do you think were sexually exploited? And we're not even talking about other inmates or guards, right? But even by counselors. See, when we talk about the vulnerability of Black men, this is easy to pass over because Black men are so imposing and feared in a larger sense that it even reflects on the children. There's data out there that suggests that even children as young as 5 years old are seen to be older and more threatening than they actually are, simply because they're Black and male. Right? So you don't have to look like Mike Tyson to be imposing. Somebody can see you as imposing simply because you exist. And this has an impact on Black men's quality of life and Black boys' quality of life, where such exploitation is readily dismissed. So the lack of empathy for Mike is really a reflection of a lack of empathy for Black men in general. And the argument in media is that because Black men are so aggressive and monstrous and so on and so forth, they don't deserve empathy. So we have a hard time generating it or even thinking about men in vulnerable terms. It's one of the reasons that my work is so fixated on the vulnerability of Black men and boys, because nobody cares when it happens. And then we act like it doesn't have any lasting impact. Let me show you something else. The impact of this perception of Black men as monsters, and even an accusation, particularly a false one. This is a story you can find in NBCnews.com. Groveland 4, the Black men pardoned after 1949 rape accusation, honored with a memorial. The 70-year-old case against Charles Greenlee, Walter Irvin, Samuel Shepard, and Ernest Thomas has remained a disturbing example of racial injustice from the Jim Crow era. That's their picture right there, right? Okay. Family members of the 4 young Black men accused of raping a white woman in Florida 70 years ago. So this article was written in 2020. We're talking 1950, right? Gathered Friday for the unveiling of a memorial that lays bare the gross injustices they endured. But amid the celebration, the families of those men, known as the Groveland Four, told the large crowd in attendance that the struggle to clear their names is far from over. While Charles Greenlee, Walter Irvin, Samuel Shepard, and Ernest Thomas were posthumously pardoned of the crime last year by Governor Ron DeSantis, the four have not been exonerated. It's hard to put into words and have you understand the pain and hardships this injustice has caused this family for 70 years, according to Gerald Threat, nephew of Irvin's, said of the unveiling. Irvin died in 1969, a year after he was released on parole. The only thing that can rectify this injustice is a full exoneration by the state, Thread added. We cannot pick and choose what we allow. It's all or nothing. The pardon forgave the men of the crime, but an exoneration would declare they did not commit the rape against the victim, a then 17-year-old named Norma Paget, who was living in the community of Groveland. Now in her 80s, Paget appeared before the Clemency Board in January 2019 to ask them to not pardon the men. To not pardon them. Right? Now, I don't even got to talk about Emmett Till. I've done shows on that. That case is still going on to this very day. But the idea associated with black males and the mere accusation, we don't even have to talk about the guilt. We don't have to get to whether it happened or not. The mere accusation is enough to follow you for the rest of your life. So whether we're talking about custodial rape or whether we're talking about false accusations, either way, because black men are black men, and because of the legacy of how black men have been perceived in this country, and in some instances globally, has a lasting impact on the very quality of your life. On Friday, with DeSantis in attendance, other family members of the men also urged for an exoneration. I think we haven't reached the end of the road, but we have come a long way, said Carol Greenlee, daughter of Charles Greenlee, who was 16 and the youngest of the suspects when an all-white jury sentenced him to life in prison. Give me hope that we will make that final push for exoneration, she added. State Representative Geraldine Thompson, a Democrat, and other supporters at the dedication said they will continue fighting to clear the men's names. Thompson, had previously said that DeSantis, a Republican who assumed office more than a year ago, was made aware of the exoneration request. The state constitution, however, doesn't give the governor or the clemency board the power to exonerate someone. Typically, it takes a court to overturn a conviction, and for prosecutors to drop the charges, she would then effectively exonerate the person. That's what we're dealing with. As usual, I'll put the links to everything I put up here in the description box under sources. I'll also include an article about Mike being convicted in the first place. So you can read more about that if it's not something you're familiar with. Right? But there's not only a lifelong impact that black men have to endure. I've actually called this something very specific. And I remember how much heat that I got when I first announced it. I listed it among the various types of anti-black misandry. I think I've come up with about 15 different forms of it. But one of the ones I talked about is what I call heterophobia, right? I didn't invent heterophobia, but I call it anti-black male heterophobia. It is a fear of heterosexual black men. And it's very distinct that we frame it that way because it's something that has traction historically. When you look at the Groveland Four or Emmett Till or any of the black men lynched from slavery through Reconstruction, at the base accusation with no evidence by a white woman that they committed a crime such as rape, right? These are all demonstrations of a very particular type of fear of heterosexual black men because they're talking explicitly about the violation of white women. Now, it can manifest in a variety of different ways. It isn't limited to white women, but it is a factor in black male life that needs to be dealt with. When we talk about heterophobia or anti-black male heterophobia, it is a very particular fear. And so the funny part is when I announced it, I think I did it on Facebook a few years ago. And this was something that Dr. Ronald Neal and I talked about. And he actually was the first one to actually kind of describe it. And then I began to, kind of apply it to anti-black misandry. But when we had these conversations, it was a trip to me that people were coming forward and saying, this doesn't exist. This isn't real. And I'm like, but you've heard of lynching. You've heard of false incarceration. I mean, false accusation. You've heard of incarceration for trumped up charges. We've been talking about this since at least Reconstruction, but we're going to act like this isn't happening. Really. The fear of black men, the use of policy, the use of law, the use of courts, the use of incarceration as ways to control black male labor, but also to sexually exploit it. And it's predicated on a fear of black males. It is heterophobia when a 5-year-old black boy is criminalized by a teacher in school because of his blackness and maleness. Yes, it is anti-black heterophobia. It's not limited to grown men accused of rape. It has many different expressions. And I'm interested in seeing some of you talk about this in the comment section and share your experiences of when you think you might have experienced anti-black male heterophobia. Because these things are real and they impact black male lives. And they create vulnerability for many black males across age, across class, across geography, in all kinds of ways. So that said, I appreciate it. Yeah. Okay, I'm just glancing through some of the comments. I apologize for not catching all of them, but this is the kind of stuff we got to think about because it not only affects, for the majority of my listeners, their quality of life, but if you have sons, nephews, mentees, you name it, it affects every black male in terms of what can happen. So we need to have a language so we can better explain and understand what's going on. And I don't particularly care if other people like the language or not. I don't give a damn. If it actually explains something black men experience and black men and boys can use it to better understand their own experiences, that is all I care about. I don't give a damn who likes it, who doesn't like it, who wants to use it, who doesn't want to use it. I could care less. But if it's useful to brothers, that's the only thing I'm concerned with. Anyway, y'all have a good one. Talk to you later. Peace.